was a sophomore, I started playing goalkeeper, and I went to make a save, and I should have blown out my knee. I went to the doctor, and instead they told me I was actually not born with ACLs. In order for me
I'm still amazed by that.
Right?
God.
So in order for me to continue playing, I had to...
On the field, off the field.
We've got your game plan.
This is the Val and Ann Show.
Where athletes level up in sport and life.
I'm Val.
I'm Ange.
And welcome to episode 3.
Accountability. Ooh. Just rhyme.
Accountability.
Ooh. Bringing it one step further from last week when we talked about perspective, and you talked a lot about being honest with yourself. That was the advice you gave them. So what does it mean to really be accountable in sports and life?
With accountability, we can go in so many different ways with this. But the main thing that comes to mind for me is, leading by example. On the field, off the field. You got to hold yourself accountable before you try to hold others accountable. Mm-hmm. So you have to set the standard for yourself, and then it trickles down to everybody else. And, that goes within sports, that goes within training, that goes within life, day-to-day tactics. You have to hold yourself accountable to get the results that you want. What about you?
I think your growth depends on how accountable you are for the choices that you make, for your effort, for what you're doing when no one is watching. And I think accountability is something that, going back to being honest with yourself, like, are you putting in the work? And if you aren't, that's why people aren't following you. If you aren't, that's why you're not playing. If you aren't, then that's why you're in a slump. But if you take accountability for those times that you're not, and you learn that to grow, then I think you're really growing as an athlete and a person. Mm-hmm.
That word growth jumps out to me, because with growth comes maturity. And from a young athlete to a professional athlete, there's a tremendous room of growth. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And with growth, that word accountability, constantly keeps coming up. Mm-hmm. And no matter what you do as an athlete, no matter what you do as a CEO of a Fortune 500 company,
yep,
you have to work and you have to grow to become that professional athlete, to become that CEO. And if you understand your growth and you understand your journey, the margin of failure diminishes, because you are so driven by the life lessons that you have learned along the way. Mm-hmm. And just tying it all back to sports as an athlete. And I can remember when I was a freshman and the first time I put on a football pad. I'd never played football until my freshman year in high school. And it was just one shell shock. But I was like, okay, I made this decision to do this.
Yeah. And
I had a lot of growing up to do, rapidly fast. Mm-hmm. And I embraced it. I didn't think twice about it. I just kept going with it. Mm-hmm. And I signed that contract with myself, and I had to hold myself accountable every day.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Every day. And I was like, okay, this is what I want to do. I'm going to play football. I'm going to play sports. And it wasn't just football. It was basketball. If I made a decision to do track, I'm going to do track. If I said I'm going to become a life coach, I made that decision to do that. Mm-hmm. And I have to grow and learn along the way. But I had to evaluate myself day to day, but also season to season. Mm-hmm. And once you evaluate yourself, you understand that nothing is set in stone.
Yeah.
Nothing in your steps are going to be perfect.
Yeah.
And you have to learn along the way. So
for me, accountability happened at a young age. When I was a sophomore, I started playing goalkeeper, and I went to make a save, and I should have blown out my knee. I went to the doctor, and instead they told me I was actually not born with ACLs. in order for me
I'm still amazed by that.
Right?
God.
So in order for me to continue playing, I had to lift. Like as a sophomore, that had to be part of it. Whether my team was lifting or not, I had to put the time in. I had to hold myself accountable. And then when I went to college, no one would recruit me because I was a medical risk. So when I got the chance at Ball State, in order for me to get the scholarship and keep it, I had to hold myself accountable to the extra training, and that's where I learned accountability and what happens with it. Because if I wasn't playing, it was because I wasn't strong enough at the time, and I had to go back to the drawing board, like you talked about last week, and hold myself accountable. And it's really important in training and preparation, in your mindset. You know, I'm in a slump. Well, what am I telling myself? Am I telling myself I'm not good enough? Well, hold yourself accountable. Now change it.
Yeah.
Changing is part of accountability. You can't just bring it to light. It's time to change it. Oh, my back.
Yeah. Lifting weights.
Yeah, lifting weights, getting hurt.
Well, let's talk about that, because you held yourself accountable and you brought that to your team.
Yes, and my teammates held me accountable because they were like, Ange, we need you. And that meant something to me. That's how I knew I was built different.
How much tighter did that bring you together as a team?
Oh, well, that's why we were so successful for shore field hockey. We didn't lose.
Oh, yeah. and that's a big thing. You know, when we talk about accountability with leaders, and I always say leaders lead, followers follow, and your leaders got to be held accountable too, and they got to understand that your teammates are looking to you for that guidance. You know, and it might not be for you to make that play, but for you to might assist that play. You know, and, you know, being a good teammate, being a good leader, you know, is holding each other accountable.
Yeah.
You know, hey, you didn't show up for this workout today. It shouldn't have to come from the coach. When you're holding each other accountable as a team, you're a dangerous team.
Yes.
You're a dangerous team. And you have a bond that, hey, this ain't the way it's supposed to be. You know, and I've had that happen to me numerous times. You know, where we had to hold ourselves accountable just in training. Hey, you're not making these times, or you making us run more.
Yeah.
You know, either shit, get off the pot.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, we ain't trying to run 45 110s again because you can't make your time. You know, so we got to, you know, drag the ones that need to be dragged, you know, and we got to push the ones that need to be pushed. But also, you know, you got to understand that, hey, you got to do it as well, too.
Yeah. You have to put in the extra reps if you're not where you need to be, and that was something that was important. It's funny, today I was sprinting because I've learned that sprinting helps my body composition at an older age, and it's those high intensity workouts. I've been really studying this. And I got on the treadmill, and that's how I hurt my back. I was sprinting at 8.0. I haven't walked past 3.0, right? But I went back to being on the line at Shore Regional's track and knowing I had to get it done for my teammates. And I wasn't a runner. And I was like, you know what? It's the same thing now in my life. I have to get this done to be healthy for my family, for my nephew that we talked about, and for me to keep going. Because when I live to 100, still all in, it's real. So I was literally, that was what I was telling myself this morning. I'm like, and I told you I was lifting again. And I was like, I have to be better.
Yeah, but you got to self-evaluate yourself too, you know. It's like you got
No, I have to go
a wise man once told me, pick and choose the pavements you run on.
It was a treadmill. It was very bouncy.
Listen, treadmills.
Anyway,
treadmill gives me nightmares.
I would like to questions to ask yourselves, athletes, as you're listening right now, or parents, coaches that are listening. Questions to ask yourself if you're being accountable are, I would say the biggest one that comes to mind is, are you bringing positive energy to your team or are you draining it? Right? Another question, are you willing to hear feedback and be coached hard to grow from it, or are you making excuses why your coach doesn't like you?
Well, I gotta.
What's a question you got?
It's been around me where no excuses, just results. And I write it everywhere I go. It's all over my house. It's on the board in the gym. No excuses, just results. And if we learn not to make excuses about the things that we're not good at, now you're taking a major step to holding yourself accountable.
And the things that happen to you.
Yeah.
Also.
It all goes hand in hand, and you have to understand that, you know, the start of it has to happen with you.
Yes.
And I'm not talking about just as an athlete. I'm talking about as a coach. You know, I had to hold myself accountable. I made it. I told the kid that had you have 4 sets, but coach, you said 3. That's my bad. I did. Now you got 5. You know, I hold myself accountable too, because you know I make mistakes, right? And that's the part of being, you know, good at what you do. I roll the dice every day, and I say, you know what? I'm a football player. If I'm gonna make my move to go inside, I'm gonna make that move to go inside.
Yeah.
If I send this blitz and they hit a home run, I roll the dice. Right? I got to live with it.
Yeah.
Right? And if just so happen to get beat off of it, that's my fault. That's on me. You know, but I'm gonna evaluate it before I take full accountability.
Yeah.
You know, if I make a mistake, you know, I hold myself accountable. And that's just, you know, part of growth. You know, not every step is going to be perfect.
Yeah.
But you got to understand, make the next one, get back on track.
Essa Sports Performance and Fitness, where athletes are created. We live in the moment, work for a future. That's our mantra. To take every athlete and make them a better athlete, but overall even a better person. We challenge you mentally and physically and tie both together to make you the most dominant athlete. We look forward to getting you better. Are you ready to get better? Are you up for the challenge?
All right, so I have a fine line question. All right, ready for this? So you have to be accountable. So your coach isn't playing you, and the coach has a reason why they're not playing you. But in your mind, you've told yourself a story, and that story is the coach doesn't like me, and when things are getting hard, I'm, you know, cutting corners, and I'm not invested anymore because I'm not playing, and things are getting hard. So what is the fine line there to a coach holding the kid accountable, right? The coach is holding the kid accountable. They're not playing. Now this kid has lost their motivation and drive. When do we intervene to say, all right, I've got to get this done because I want to play? When do you intervene as a coach? Do you continue to just, you know, let them, you know, you lose that kid, or do we sit down with the kid and ask them, hey, how can you be more accountable for what's going on? What do you think? Because you want the kid to step up and have their own accountability. But when you see that they're not, when do you step in?
Are you asking me as a parent or as a coach?
Actually, answer me from both perspectives.
Because as a parent, I would like to sit and watch practice.
Okay.
And I like to see what's taking place in practice.
So you will get involved.
I'll evaluate.
Okay.
Before I get involved.
Okay.
You know,
That's good.
And as a coach, you know, if the coach has written that player off,
Yeah.
bad news.
Bad news.
Bad news. As a coach, you never write a player off, no matter what.
Okay.
Because you don't know what this kid can become or what might end up with this kid later on in life.
Yeah.
Now, you don't know. You have to close that gap.
Yeah.
And you got to close that gap, you know, with that player and also with yourself. Right? And the kid could be mouthing off to you, whatever like that. You're the adult. You got to understand, listen,
Yeah.
I'm the coach. You're the player.
Yeah.
I've given you every wish opportunity. What are you going to do with this?
Yeah.
All right? And you're still not retaining it.
Yeah.
Now you got to go back and evaluate this player. Does it take too much energy? You're a coach.
Yeah. You're teaching them.
Yeah, they're looking to you for that energy.
Yeah.
All right? And it doesn't matter how you got to teach it to him or her. You got to take the time. You know, and I'm talking now from a player standpoint. You know, when you switch from a position to a new position and you never know the position, you never learn the position, never played the position.
Yeah.
All right? And you're not picking up the techniques and the stuff as fast as possible as everybody else in front of you. All right? you have to go ask that coach for help. All right? And if the coach is not willing to help you, then you got to take the initiative and say, listen, I want this bad enough. And if you want it bad enough, you're not going to accept not playing. You're not going to accept being mediocre. Right? You're going to now become an overachiever because you're going to be hungry for the opportunity to play, to showcase your athletic abilities, to showcase who you are as a person.
Yeah.
You know, and that can help you not just in that moment, but now you just created a habit that you said, okay, I did this on my own. You know, and
you remember that for the rest of your life.
Exactly. And I didn't have nobody hold my hand through it.
Yeah.
You know, so you have to answer those questions sometimes for yourself. If the coach is not willing to help you, you got to prove it to him that, you know, I really want this. And you're going to work extremely hard. Like, think about this. The movie, The Program. Right?
I've never seen that.
The movie, The Program. Latimer.
Who the heck is Latimer?
Latimer is nuts of a defensive end. He comes back. Obviously, he cheated. He did steroids. But he wanted it that bad because he didn't have the athletic ability. So he cheated.
Yeah.
And then when they caught him on it and he got off of it, his, you know, progression dropped down, but he was still in that. He was still in that spot to make an impact. And he failed and realized he let his teammates down. And the accountability that he had to his teammates was no longer there because of the foolish things that he did. And he held himself accountable.
Yeah.
And then he came back and then made a phenomenal play at the end of the season. You know,
I like that.
You have to stay with that. You got to stay in that moment. And he just, you know, and the moral of me saying that is that he came in as a weakling freshman that couldn't blow by anybody, couldn't lift weights, couldn't do none of that. Yeah, he cheated to get there. But at the end, you know, he cleaned himself up and then found his way back because he had another opportunity. The coach didn't write him off because he seen the success behind him.
Yeah.
And he knew if he wrote him off, who knows where this kid would have ended up. Yeah.
I'm really big lately in this space of like holding like this parent space of when does the coach get held accountable for these lessons that need to be taught for these kids, right? So like you have a situation happened and a coach yelled at 7th grade kid. Tells him, the kid says something to him, and the coach says, you know, get the F out of my face. I have no time for your bullshit today, right? 7th grader. When, as a parent, can you step in and hold that coach accountable for the way they just talk to your kid?
Right there.
Right there.
Yeah.
To me, like, but then there's but out there right now is, oh, these kids are soft and we can't step in for them all the time. I think that's a line that's crossed that you step in immediately.
100%.
Yeah.
You know,
you don't talk to kids like that.
Well, they shouldn't be in that role. You know, and as a parent, if I'm seeing that, as a 7th grader, they're still in that developmental stage.
Yes.
You know, so their brains, their bodies are still growing, and you're not willing to push and pull this kid along because he or she needs it.
I think that needs to be more accountability.
That kid will remember that
forever.
Yeah. And it might not be a good memory.
No.
You know,
no.
because they're going to start thinking that I'm not good enough.
Yeah.
Instead of believing in themselves and feeding them little confidence little by little.
Yeah.
And then to constantly keep building them up, and because they might end up be the person to make you happy.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And that might be the person to help you become successful.
Yeah. I agree. Like, I'm in this space. Like, I guess it burns a little deeper now that I see Luka. And I'm like, when he becomes, you know, an athlete, if he does, or whatever he does, and there is something going wrong there, I think there needs to be a conversation. I don't think you attack the coach. I think it needs to be, hey, this is what he heard. Yeah. What was actually said. And let's have a conversation around that, because I'm trying to teach my kid these things, and this needs to happen. Like your son. Who's older, your son or your daughter?
My daughter.
Your daughter. So I think these conversations with parents and coaches need to happen more. I just think there needs to be more lines of communication happening.
Well, as a coach.
I mean, if you get a head coaching job, right? Would you say coaches are not, parents are not allowed to talk to you? Would you
No.
ever have that rule?
No way. I want the parents to come to practice. Sit up in the stands.
I love that.
So that way we'll eliminate all
All
confusion.
the problems and confusion.
Oh yeah, and you see because as a football coach,
Mm-hmm.
let's say I'm coaching football, all right, or I'm coaching girls lacrosse. All right, you have to see how I interact with your kid, and you got to see why your kid is not playing as much.
Yeah.
Right, because they're getting every opportunity. And
Yeah.
with me, what you see is what you get.
Yeah.
And if my coaching staff is going to be the same way.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have time for that, right? Because at the end of the day, Friday Night Lights, we're trying to win.
Yeah.
You know, in a tournament for girls lacrosse, we're trying to come out undefeated, right? And everybody gets an opportunity to perform during those practice times.
Yeah.
And if you're not getting it, because you understand that they're under evaluation, so the parents should sit and say, okay, well, he is coaching my kid.
Yeah.
You know, now if he's coaching my kid too hard, is he coaching everybody like that? You know, and you know, it's not about being fair. It's about being, you know, treating everybody the same way.
Yeah.
I don't care if my quarterback is a superstar. Don't be late to practice.
Yeah. That's a good point.
You know, if you're late to practice,
Accountability.
there's consequences. You know, if you're my Mike starting Mike linebacker and you're late to practice and you didn't communicate with me, there's consequences. You know, because what are we teaching them?
Yeah.
That you're above the game, that you're bigger. No, you're not bigger than the team.
Yep.
Right? And it comes back to, you know, your team, your accountability, you know, what our perspective is, what is our identity as a team, and then for each individual, you know, we're only going to be as strong as our weakest link.
Yeah.
So everybody has to be held accountable,
Yeah.
even as coaches, because kids nowadays will hold us accountable.
Yeah. I do think those conversations are really important for kids to even have, like to see. Also, a kid will see more than what they'll hear. So if they see a coach holding everybody accountable in a fair way, like you just said, the star to the player coming off the bench, then that kid is going to want to take accountability more, because that action is huge and that accountability is across the board. Then you know what to expect. Everything is structured for them. It's written right to them.
You're giving them a formula, you know, of success.
Yep.
And you know, I see a lot of coaches go off the game plan because adversity hits. No, you adjust with adversity, but you stay within your game plan.
Yeah. You're building a culture.
Because if you believe in something and you believe it's going to work because you did your homework.
Yeah.
And you have to do your homework day in and day out. You know, as a trainer, as a performance coach, I tell my athletes all the time, you are always under evaluation with me.
Yeah.
I'm always evaluating you. I could. Well, what's wrong with you today? Something's not right.
Yeah.
Right? You're not yourself.
Yeah.
Right? You know, or this one, I think you had too much caffeine today. All right? Keep it that way. You know, once you show me who you are, it is what it is.
Yeah.
That's who you are.
Yeah.
I don't expect nothing less. You know.
Yeah.
Got to trust. You got to trust what you see.
Yeah. Accountability is huge. What would you say? What's your last word of advice about accountability? Simplify it.
Energy and attitude.
Okay.
You know, bring a positive energy, bring a positive attitude, and your accountability will stay with you no matter what. You know, as long as you got that energy, that positive energy behind it, you think positive, you talk positive, you know, instead of talking negative to yourself, and you have a positive attitude towards everything. You have a positive attitude towards life.
Yeah.
You know, and you'll live a phenomenal life no matter what is thrown at you. You know,
When I think about accountability, I think about what I have to be accountable for my actions and how my actions affect those around me. So always be responsible for what you're doing to those around you. So if I have to be accountable for what I got to get done, then that helps my teammates, that helps my program, that helps the business I work in, whatever I do the rest of my life. I have to not only be accountable for my actions, I have to think about how they affect others.
yes.
Service. I think if you're serving with your heart, I think it's important. Yeah.
Oh yeah, you can't.
No.
you got to think before you act.
Mm-hmm.
You got to
Yep.
think. You got to think before you react to certain situations.
Yep.
You know, because one bad decision can, you know,
Yeah.
change a lot
100%.
in your life. So,
All right. Well, till next time.
till next time, episode 3. I'm Val. That's Ange.
Have a great week.
Have a great week.